Hi, I'm Dick Cometti, and I'd like to welcome you to Wilderness Familiarization. This is my third year as a member of the Stanislaus Wilderness Volunteers, and I'm going to try to give you a feel for what it is we volunteers do in the wild. There's some work involved, some time spent, and some effort made, but the rewards are immeasurable. The wilderness areas we monitor are kept in better order by our efforts. Our fellow citizens and their heirs will continue to have wild places to visit, and we personally get to spend time in some of the most glorious places our world has to offer. We have, under the guidance of Bob Wetzel and the Forest Service, responsibility for at least part of 3 wilderness areas: McCollamy, Carson Iceberg, and Immigrant. I know next to nothing about McCollamy and just a bit about Carson Iceberg. Consequently, most of what I have to say will be about Immigrant. Much of what I have to say, though, is applicable within any wilderness. McCollamy Wilderness is located about 21 miles north of Summit Ranger Station, just south of Carson Pass. It is described by the Forest Service as a rugged landscape with somewhat difficult access, and is probably our least visited wilderness. The McCollamy River Canyon is its primary feature. McCollamy Wilderness was established along with the passage of the Wilderness Act of 1964. You'll see a bit later the statistics we've been able to put together on wilderness usage. Up to now, we've only computerized the trailheads and zone information for Immigrant and Carson Iceberg. We're looking for help from our growing group of McCollamy volunteers to get this information online. Carson Iceberg Wilderness is located between Highways 4 and 108, with numerous access points from both highways, as well as from Clark Fork Road. The higher and less accessible eastern part of the wilderness lies in Toyabe National Forest. To the west, easy access makes this a popular day hiking area, particularly from the trailheads along Clark Fork Road. Carson Iceberg was established in 1984. Some popular trailheads in the Clark Fork area are County Line, Wheats Meadow, Arnott Creek, and Disaster Creek. From County Line, it's a short hike to the very popular Sword Lake seen here, and its companion Lost Lake. We'll check to ensure that campers aren't setting up too close to the water. From Wheats Meadow Trailhead, we head west. In the spring, we are afforded a good view of Niagara Creek Falls, also known as Ford Falls or just Niagara Falls. There are man-made objects of historic significance in the wilderness, such as this old cabin located in Wheats Meadow. Sonora Pass and St. Mary's Pass trailheads give access to Sonora Peak, the highest point in Carson Iceberg, as well as other points of interest to the north, such as Stanislaus Peak. From the Highway 108 corridor along Herring Creek Road, we can climb Eagle Peak for a view across the middle fork of the Stanislaus at Carson Iceberg and Sonora Pass off to the right. Immigrant Wilderness is located between Highway 108 and Yosemite National Park. Most access points are off Highway 108, and many of the trailheads require some dirt road driving. Immigrant was designated as a primitive area in 1931 and established as a wilderness area in 1975. Having computerized our permit system, we now are able to monitor wilderness usage much better than in the past. Here is a subset of some popular destinations within Immigrant. We also monitor the wilderness by zones for area usage information. You can see the zones within the wilderness by the green boundary lines. Sonora Pass Trailhead is located along the famous Pacific Crest National Scenic Trail, or PCT, which passes through Carson Iceberg and borders both Immigrant and McCollamy. There's a nice parking area and bathroom at this important trailhead. Levitt Peak at 11,569 feet is the highest point in any of our wilderness areas. Dead Man Lake at its base is accessible by Blue Canyon on an unmaintained wilderness trail. Levitt Meadow on the eastern side of the pass gives us access to Hoover Wilderness, through which we can access the extreme northern and eastern parts of Immigrant. Levitt Lake, a bit closer to the pass but still on the east side, is a popular camping area, and the trailhead gives an alternate access to some of the more remote Immigrant destinations. From Levitt Lake, a climb over Big Sam at a bit over 10,800 feet gets us into Immigrant Meadow, a high mountain meadow above 9,000 feet. Here we look back at Big Sam from Immigrant Pass, which honors the memory of the first group of European pioneers to pass through this part of the Sierra in 1852. Off to our left, toward Hoover Wilderness, is the easily recognizable Grizzly Peak. Just across Grizzly Meadow lies the beautiful Snow Lake. The cliffs just beyond are the border with Yosemite. Going southwest from here toward Bigelow, Black Bear, and Huckleberry Lakes, we stop at the top of a ridge to look back at our route. This part of our hike is on a secondary trail and is not as easy to follow. A GPS, compass, and some good map reading techniques can be very helpful. The East Flange Trailhead is for high-clearance four-wheel drive vehicles only, but gives us a great access to both lower and upper relief valleys and to Granite Dome. East Flange itself was a prominent point used by early travelers coming from the east, as it can be seen from far off and is very recognizable. After crossing Lower Relief Valley and bushwhacking the lower portion of Granite Dome, we arrive at one of the high lakes tucked away at the foot of the peak. Last season, a group of us did some survey work in this area. Among other things, we wanted to ensure that these beautiful lakes are not being overused and that the established campsites are in good condition. Some campsites and fire rings needed to be removed. A cross-country climb to the top of Granite Dome gives a view of Ridge and Iceland Lakes, as well as Relief Reservoir and Kennedy Meadow in the distance. Just beyond Granite Dome to the south, in a high meadow, we find Wilson Meadow Lake, still off trail. And beyond that, drop down to Long Lake. Remember that unlike hiking on a regular trail where you should walk on the well-worn route, when bushwhacking, try to spread your group out and attempt, as much as possible, to travel on durable surfaces. Kennedy Meadow is a popular camping, day hiking, and fishing area. The pack station located here takes people and provisions into many of the most popular areas. Summit Creek Trail is used by backpackers, day hikers, and pack trains. You might see trail maintenance crews out here, since this trail is very heavily used. Kennedy Lake, seen here from above, is one of the most popular destinations because of its fishing and proximity to Kennedy Meadow. Summit Creek Trail passes above Relief Reservoir, a popular day hike destination. At Lunch Meadow, we decide whether to cross Summit Creek and venture over Mosquito Pass or continue straight ahead to Brown Bear Pass. Mosquito Pass will allow us to drop down into Immigrant Lake, a large lake in the heart of the wilderness. Immigrant Lake is a very popular destination. This area has been so used that there are now special fire restrictions due to the lack of fuel. We monitor this lake to ensure these restrictions are being observed. If we had chosen Brown Bear Pass, that would have given us access once again to High Immigrant Meadow. At the time this photo was taken, it is not a good idea to proceed into the meadow, not just because of the snow, but because the meadow is fragile when very wet, and durable surfaces would be nearly impossible to find. At the south end of Immigrant, and much lower, is Kibbe Ridge Trailhead. From here we have access to wild places in both Yosemite and Immigrant. The major trailheads are well marked with signs similar to the one here at Kibbe Ridge. The trail along the Yosemite Immigrant boundary climbs up over Styx Pass to Lord Meadow and Huckleberry Lake. This was also an area of some importance last season. East Cherry Creek has become a popular kayaking location. Our teams went in a few times to monitor conditions. Since we were not coming down in kayaks, we bushwhacked up the canyon. The creek spills over granite through most of the canyon and is, as we are told, ideal for kayaks. A couple of the most heavily used trailheads are Crabtree and Janelli Cabin, which are accessed via Crabtree Road near Dodge Ridge. From Janelli we climb toward Burst Rock, where we have a good view of the South Fork Canyon, then past Powell Lake and on through Whitesides Meadow, where we stop to pull some fallen branches off the trail. If possible, it's helpful to keep the trails clear to avoid having travelers create bypasses. Finally, we arrive at Toe Jam Lake, seen here. And a short cross-country hike later, we're at beautiful Leopold Lake. Crabtree Trailhead gives us access to heavily used Camp and Bear Lakes, and after a short cross-country hike, Granite Lake. Camp, Bear, Powell Lakes, along with Waterhouse Lake and Grouse Lake, are areas where camping is restricted to one night per trip due to their easy access and popularity. From this trailhead, we also have access past Groundhog Meadow to Louse Canyon, and from there on a secondary trail to Pingree Lake, and beyond that to Big Lake. During the 2004 season, one of our projects was to remove trash that had been accumulating in a granite pit for some years. We removed 400 pounds of trash, which was later transported out on horseback. Pingree is a wilder place for the effort. Near Buck Lakes, there was another project in 2004. We'd been told of a cache of goods in a small meadow above Upper Buck Lake. With a little exploring, we discovered a makeshift corral and this stuff, apparently stored for future use. We inventoried the contents and placed a sign at the site. Someone, probably the same folks, had dug a well in the meadow. The well was filled in an attempt to restore the site, and a future project is to return and remove the cache. I hope many of you will have the opportunity to see some of these sites in person, as my photographs don't do them justice. If you can't get deep into the wilderness, then there are still plenty of wonders to behold on day hikes. And finally, those who will be helping at the front desk are the frontline or shock troops for the wilderness. They can and do keep visitors from making poor decisions, help them with planning, and inform them on the virtues of leave no trace. Thank you, and welcome to the wilderness. Let's keep it wild.